Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Get out of the Promoter 101.
I'm Matt Sorensen from Beatbox Entertainment in Copenhagen, Denmark. I'm on Promoter 101.
All aboard for the Promoter 101 podcast.
That's right. It's Promoter 101, the podcast. The count is up to episode 74. I'm Luke Pierce with my broadcast partner, Dan Steinberg.
That's right, Luke. We're back stateside, and we've got some great interviews, including C3’s Charles Attal, giving us an inside look at how C3 works.
After that, we're going to be joined by Opus 3 artists, queen of the classical artist herself, Miss Sarah Pelch.
We've got a brand new war story from Live Nation's Rich Best.
Plus a bonus interview with Milk and Honey's Lucas Keller.
And of course, the news of the week.
My name's Melvin Ben, Managing Director of Festival Republic on Promoter 101.
We're finishing up that world tour. Come catch a live taping of Promoter 101.
Tuesdays, July 24th, IAVM's Venue Connects 2018, Promoter versus Agent panel, a star-studded lineup including CAA's Brian Hill, APA's Ralph James, Emporium's Jason Zink, Frank Production Charlie Goldstone, and the legend Live Nation's Riley O'Connor. I'll be doing the hosting or moderating in Toronto, Canada. Come check it out.
And you can register for IAVM at iavm.org. In the meantime, keep up with us on Twitter. I'm at W. Luke Pierce. Dan is at The Jew. And the show is at Promoters. That's Promoters, plural, 101.
Catch up via email anytime you want by sending us a note to Steiny at promoter101.net. You can reach either of us there, we promise.
I'm Lucy Dickens from ITB, and I'm on Promoter 101.
If you've missed any of the past podcasts, you can always catch up at promoter101.net. This week, we feature a classic reissue, episode 32.
That episode features an interview with Partisan Arts' Tom Chauncey talking about the challenges of booking the entire world for his artists, plus his work with Jack Johnson.
Celebrity Access, Larry LeBlanc shares some rock and roll history with us.
And Music Fest Northwest, Project Pabst, Eau Claire's, and Boston Calling's talent buyer Trevor Solomon joins to discuss scoring some of the biggest festival lineups of the past few seasons.
Plus, we've got Lisa Roberts challenging me and Tour Designs Bill Kittle for 3 questions.
Don't you think it's actually time that you subscribe to this podcast? I mean, it is absolutely free, and we are pretty much everywhere you listen to podcasts. We are on SoundCloud. We are on iTunes. We are on Stitcher. Just click that button. It's free. It takes 2 seconds.
Peter Aiken here, Aiken Promotions, and I'm on Promoter 101.
News of the week.
Dan, it's time for the news of the week. At the time of reading this, we just got word that iHeartMedia has filed for bankruptcy, ending a months-long anticipated move. They'll see the radio and outdoor advertising behemoth restructure its more than $20 billion in debt that's plagued its balance sheet since Bain Capital and Thomas Lee Partners negotiated for control in 2008. CEO Bob Pittman said that the agreement will allow iHeart to definitively address more than $20 billion in debt that has burdened iHeart's capital structure. And achieving a capital structure that finally matches their impressive operating business will further enhance iHeart's position as America's #1 audio company. Dan, I would say that it's going to be a long road ahead for iHeart, but in the meantime, the company says it's going to plan to continue to operate as usual. So I don't think radio stations are shutting their doors or anything like that in the coming weeks. It's going to be a matter of time to see how this plays out.
Clearly, it is easy to see that there is a new day in radio, and I think the streaming online is making that tougher and tougher, but terrestrial radio is a big part of this world, and I hope it sticks around and they figure this out. Listed under the things of what the fuck, South by Southwest has been under attack, essentially, with 3 different bomb threats. 1 person was killed, 2 people were injured. Austin, stay safe. Music industry folks, we really should be living in a safer, easier place to enjoy our music.
It really is gross to me, Dan, that people have to suffer through this. I mean, I remember being at South by maybe 4 years ago with you, Dan, when a driver just ripped through a line of people waiting for a Tyler, the Creator show at the Vans showcase. It was absolutely disgusting, and people shouldn't have to think about this when they go to a concert. This should be a place where people can escape from these kind of worries of the world, and for this to be happening again is just absolutely troubling. So our hearts at Promoter 101 go out to everybody in Austin at South by, please stay safe and please keep the people that were viciously affected by this bombing in your thoughts and prayers for the next couple days. ICM Partners has named 5 new agents, including Jess Froman and Julia Senerth in the concerts department. Those two will report to Steve Levine, Rob Prince, and Mark Siegel. I have to give a big shout out to Julia, who's come up through the ranks working with Andrea Johnson. This promotion is extraordinarily well deserved. So congrats to Julia and Jess for finally getting those stripes pinned on you at ICM.
Big shout out to Julia. Big fan. Spotify will go public in just a little less than 3 weeks now. Streaming giant is set for a direct listing on the New York Stock Exchange on April 5th under the symbol SPOT.
Some good reporting this week from Dave Brooks, as Amplify Magazine has confirmed that Silver Lake, that's the private equity firm, has finalized a $100 million deal with Tim Lewicki and Armin Azov's Oakview Group. That's the third major investment in the entertainment space for Silver Lake after a $200 million acquisition for 31% of WME back in 2012, plus a 5% stake in Madison Square Garden, which was confirmed last month. So what will Oakview Group do with this $100 million? Well, Dave Brooks carefully noted here that OVG has already added Lexington's Rupp Arena, and we give a shout out to David Farrar as the new head of booking out there, and also has the rights to develop the Key Arena in your backyard in Seattle, Dan. And right now, they're also targeting the contract for the Greek Theater in LA, which is currently under contract with SMG. Now, I can expect more expansion from Oakview Group moving forward here, but the rest of the company, they've already leased a jet for corporate travel purposes at this point. So you can say safely, these guys are going to be busy putting this $100 million to use.
$100 million here, $200 million there. Luke, it really starts to add up.
Something about that with zeros too, I think, Dan. That'll do it for News of the Week.
Hi, I'm Ben Chalice, and I'm on Promoter 101.
And finally, I want to take a moment to shine a spotlight on AGI's Nick Storch. He's one of the most respected agents in the world, and he's just killing it right now with Ghost. Pretty much a badass all the way around, making him this week's Promoter 101 Badass of the Week. Congrats goes out to you, Nick.
Alex Bewley at WME, and I'm on Promoter 101.
In our feature interview this week, we have a special interview with C3’s Charles Attal joining us to talk about how C3 has taken a new turn inside of its parent company of Live Nation.
Luke, of the 3 C's, which one do you order first? Walker, Jones, Attal?
Dan, I am not going to stick my head into the lion's mouth at this point and start ranking the Charles and Charlies here. You know, I'm sure when they started that company way back when in Austin, I'm sure there was, Charles 1, Charles 2, and Charlie. But nowadays, I'm sure everybody in the office has their own system. I'm sure they've got it worked out.
Well, clearly masters of all business and finances between the 3 of them.
Charles Attal, welcome to the podcast, dude.
Thanks, man.
You guys are in an amazing place right now as a company. Kept your independent cred, and yet you are partners with the biggest promoter in the world. So you got a nice wallet behind you. Got to feel kind of nice right now.
It's been a great partnership. The company was a little worried at first, wondering what would happen. And Michael said that nothing was going to change and we needed to continue on our path and do what we do best, and is promoting festivals. And 3 years later, I can happily say it's been fantastic, and they've helped us grow and took a little bit of the pressure off some of the ups and downs that we have in our business. And it's been great.
When you say Michael, you mean Michael Rapino?
Yeah.
Let's take a moment real quick to talk about the vastness of the company. You guys announced this morning your management firm is growing. 2 new offices coming, including one here in London.
We just started working with some new managers, and we have 17 managers now in our system. And that's a separate company than the Presents company.
So that's not part of the Live Nation deal?
No, but it's been going great. We have great bands, a lot of bands we can get behind that I actually listen to myself. It's been really good.
You get to manage bands that you actually like to listen to. What a thought.
It's amazing.
as if it wasn't content or product, as if it's something you actually
enjoy
doing.
It's hard, sometimes if you have to believe in what you're managing, or it's just, I don't want to manage anything that I don't believe in, that I can help and I can get behind, and I want to go see their shows all the time. And so it's nice.
Let's talk about the festivals, and then we'll go back to the earlier stuff. Festival side of the company has grown leaps and bounds. The Paloozas are worldwide now. Austin City Limits is crushing, and now you guys are involved with Bonnaroo. That space has really taken off for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we built our business around. We started off, we weren't in the arena game. We didn't have the juice to be in the arena game or the theater game when we were younger. And so we had to create some festivals and new working green spaces that no one really had a show in. And so We kind of organically and stumbled into the festival space by not having any juice, so to speak, in the other spaces. So we had to get outside the box a little bit back in the day.
I don't remember a time where you didn't have juice in your own space. But.
Well, I mean, we're 17 years in the festival business, and Charlie Jones had the vision of that park when we started, and we didn't know what we had when we did our first show there. So it's a lot of luck, too, getting into some of these spaces. Now we have 200 really smart people working at our company that are a lot smarter than me.
How many?
200 in Austin.
That's amazing.
They're amazing, and they're great, and they do their jobs well. They do it better than I ever did it. I used to book ACL and Lala myself, and Amy books ACL and Houston books the Lalas, and they do a 10 times better job than I did.
And they've got a support team to help with all that.
They do.
Amazing amount of volume. That's a huge overhead you guys have built into.
Yeah, it's scary.
You really can't think about it otherwise. It just crush you.
It does. It is very stressful at times. We have 2.5 floors in a building downtown Austin. It's busy. We produce private events. We produce the NFL draft. We produce inaugurations for Obama. We've done a lot of production work outside of the music space too. So we have a lot of infrastructure to help with that.
Let's talk about that. When Obama did the big concert, you guys produced that in DC, televised on HBO, and it was
cold,
everywhere.
Cold. I mean, we had guys that were getting frostbite, being out there for 24 hours with 6 degrees. It was great, though. Amazing experience. It was electric. One of the highlights of my working career, for sure.
How did that come to be? Because you guys are Austin company at this point.
We were in Grant Park in Chicago, and that's where they wanted to do the election night. And they figured since we were already there and know the parks and the ins and outs of how to set up security, how to set up the production, they contacted us to do the election night, and they liked what we did, and so they took us to D.C.
So Lollapalooza rolled you guys to Obama. That's amazing.
It was amazing.
I remember hanging out with you at Polestar right after that had played, and you told me that you were backstage hanging out with Obama, like waiting for him to go out. You guys were completely alone back there because Secret Service had it completely shut off that no one else could get to him, but you were in that secure area.
I felt like I shouldn't have been there. I had a Secret Service pin on. They give these pins, and I still felt uncomfortable. I was like, I can't be back here.
You have to give the pin back?
They let me keep it, I'm pretty sure. I can't remember. I actually save every piece of memorabilia I've ever done in any concert. I have piles of it, for 23 years of this. Early days of Stubbs, and I have a packet from that thing, and I don't know, it's in storage somewhere.
You've worked with some of the biggest rock stars in the world between the festivals and the concerts for years, but is there a bigger name that you've ever worked with than Obama?
No, there never will be.
Particularly at that moment, the guy changed the world.
It's hard to even explain the feelings that our staff had. Grant Park was packed. There was electricity in the air like no concert I've ever been to in my life. It was special. I'll never forget it.
Austin is a crazy music market. For the size of the market, there's more venues, there's more live music. I think people go to South by and they get the idea that all of those restaurants are always venues, but even when you're there and it's not, there are a ton of venues going off. There's a ton of music for a market that's essentially a tertiary.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's an A market now. I used to say it was a B market, and I've said it up until 3 or 4 years ago, but everybody has to play Austin now. Every band wants to play Austin. It's exploding. There's so much going on, and people are moving there every day from California. And, I've been talking to a lot of people who move into Austin because of the fires. A friend of mine who just moved to Austin, his house burned down. And he's like, I got to move into Austin. He's never even lived in Austin. So it's an exploding city right now. And it's been the fastest growing city in the country for the last 5 or 6 years straight, maybe even longer.
So the market keeps getting bigger. You guys are involved with the amphitheater there, which you guys built from the ground up, right?
Well, we didn't build it, but we produce it with Live Nation.
Stubbs is like no other venue in the country. The vision for that venue of being as cool as it is and turning into what it's the center of South by.
It's funny. When I got involved with Stubbs, 2 of my business partners approached me, and I was playing in a punk rock band, and I didn't know anything about booking a show. They just knew that I knew some of the musicians, and I used to play around the clubs. I used to play at the Continental Club, and I used to play at the old Antones and Liberty Lunch, all the old venues. I played at all of them. And they came to me and said, hey, you want to get involved with this venue? We're going to build this restaurant and this music venue. And they took me down to the land and showed it to me. We didn't realize that we were going to be doing concerts out back. We just thought we had the small room, and we'd have private events and stuff in the backyard. And I borrowed a little bit of money from my dad, and I turned that into equity for him. The opening night that we ever had in our room, we weren't even ready to open, but it was South by. We signed up to be a South by event. So we threw a stage in the backyard, and the Fugees played. It was the first band I'd ever worked with in my life, and they came in, and 5,000 people showed up in the neighborhood. And the police department's across the street, and they were on the police department garage. It wasn't properly secured, and we got overrun. And after that night was over, I got yelled at. We didn't have a roof. It rained. Lauryn Hill was not very happy. And I had to get on. The only time in the 20th years I've ever gone on stage to talk to the crowd or anything is when I had to shut the show down because it was raining. We didn't have, I'm an idiot. I didn't put a roof on the stage. and the band was not happy, but we stopped the show for a little bit. I had to talk to the crowd, got yelled at, booed. It was like, oh, this is real. I got to get off this stage. And I literally will never go on stage
The last
again.
time you've been on stage?
23 years ago. And I went backstage and we waited for a few minutes. Finally, the skies cleared up and we got the show in. And at the end of the night, it was the most stressful night of my life, but it was the best rush I've ever had in my life. And I was like, man, I love this. I mean, the outdoor area, we could put a couple thousand people out here. This is great. Let's build a stage. And it kind of went from there.
That backyard at Stubbs was an accident.
Pretty much. Yeah. We knew we were going to be able to do stuff out there. We didn't know that it was going to be a full-blown concert venue.
Literally is the center of South by. Like everything's built off of who's headlining that room on what nights and can you get in and the access to that room.
We organically built it and we organically grew next door and behind it. So we kind of kept building infrastructure around that. We're in the floodplain there. So we had to do everything. It was non-permanent down by the water. We're going to be out of the floodplain soon because we're doing the Waller Creek development on that creek. But it's been 23 years of literally floods and, the back building would flood sometimes. And Stubb actually said it when the guys took him down there to look at the property. And he's like, boys, this is hell's half acre. It's a perfect place for a Stubbs. That's what he said. That's what Stubbs said.
One of the most valuable land in all of
back
Austin.
then, though, it was unruly stuff going on downstairs. There was drugs being dealt out of the building. There was chickens running around. There was old wagon. The place hadn't been touched in 100 years. I mean, it was basically condemned when we took it over.
And now you got all those new hotels popping up across the street that are just
complaining about the music. They just popped up.
The places that built next to Stubbs are complaining about the
they're
music.
Not, they're actually everybody's been pretty cool, but they all know what they're getting into when they build something next door to Stubbs.
You start doing shows. You're now an independent promoter. You've got Stubbs. How does that jump to the C3 days where you start that partnership with Charlie Walker?
I mean, Charlie and I were all running buddies back in the 90s. And Charlie left and worked his way up the ranks to Live Nation. Jones
literally was the top guy at Live Nation when he left.
Yeah, he's number 2 under Michael for North America back then.
When he was at Clear Channel, he was number 2?
Yeah, he went all the way up to, I think he was 2 or 3 right under Michael. And, we were growing so fast. And I knew how Charlie operated and how great of a manager of people he was. And we also were great friends. And so we went to Costa Rica one weekend and we were having a lot of fun. It was late night. We were drinking and we kind of mapped out what we wanted to do. He came back to LA and quit his perfectly good job.
That's a lot of security he gave up.
It was crazy because we didn't have our deal really in place. Of course, we were loosey-goosey about it. Like, let's do this and let's put this here and let's grow here. And then he quit. And it's funny. I tell the story to my friends is, the only real fight that Charlie Walker and I ever got in was like how to structure the new company, like who was getting what, because we didn't really plan it. And so he and I talk every single day for the last 12 years and we're great friends and great partners. And we took the gloves off when it was trying to figure out how we were going to set it up because we just didn't plan for it. Just said, we're doing this. And then we all sat down. It's like, oh shit, this isn't as easy as I thought it was going to be to figure out how to set this up. But we got it figured out.
So you and Walker take a trip and design it on the back of a Mafia.
And Jones.
Jones was there too.
Yeah, Jones, me, Walker, and Jones were all on the trip. We had C3 merch made up before we even had C3. It was just kind of a joke. We'd wear it around. And
you're running gag.
Yeah, it was just like, hey, this is our concert business.
You guys wind up becoming a very powerful independent. You guys have a couple festivals going on. You're doing a ton of volume. You guys are super involved with South by, and it kind of takes off to the next level. And you guys are starting to do arena shows.
Yeah, we do. Amy's done a great job with our arenas and our concert bookings, and things were humming pretty good. We thought we were really smart, and we're like, oh, we're really great at this festival business. And then we really had a good eye-opening and a good kick in the you-know-what when we went and produced a couple gigs and lost millions and millions of dollars on it. It really humbled us. We're like, okay, we don't know as much as we think we know. And I see it a lot with young guys coming up who've hit a couple big ones, and I try to warn them. I was like, listen,
wait for that rainy day.
Be careful. We got dinged up really hard. We lost $10 million on a show once, and we lost $5 million on another show. And so it humbled us, and it made us really try to understand deep down how and where to produce shows. We got better because of it.
That moment where it's just like, you quit that big job and you guys all decided this thing and it went the other way.
It's the stress that you really feel right back in your back and you're tightened up and you get the headaches. That's the kind of stress it was.
Well, I think that's something all promoters know. You put those shows on sale and you think this is going to be genius, and then you realize right after the on sale that this isn't moving the way it was supposed to move. The first 10, 15 minutes, it's...
Yeah, we were riding high, too. We hit a couple of them out of the park. We're like, oh, this is easy. And then just wham, baseball bat to the face.
But those lessons pay forward into the education that you guys are now really accelerating on.
Yeah, we still trip up all the time. It's going to happen. You drill a well and nothing's there. You got to keep moving. You can't just quit. So we're going to plant a few seeds, and if it doesn't grow, we try to stick with it as long as we can. And we do stick with shows longer than we used to. too, because I think that it takes 4 years, 3 to 4 years sometimes to develop a festival, and
a huge financial investment in that.
A huge financial investment. You got to be able to take a hit. And so we did one in College Station, and we got the hell out of there. We lost $4.5 million, but we should have stuck it out. Nowadays we will stick it out, and unless you just know right out of the gate, but you usually don't know until you've really been in there for a while.
Let's talk about Palooza for a second. The tour lasted forever, and then they stopped touring it. Took a couple of years off, and Perry and Mark and you guys all came together to partner on this. Chicago was the first. How did the idea of Chicago pop into your mind? If it's going to live one place, it should be Chicago.
Well, Jones was looking for another site, and everyone said that we couldn't get Grant Park. And we tried to get other promoters to come in with us and do it. And this is right when Lollapalooza was basically canceled in 2004. And so we worked really hard, and Jones worked really, really hard on developing relationships with the city, and they let us do the show there. And so this is one of those shows where we lost a lot of money first year, but we knew we were going to not be leaving because it just felt really good. And the vibe of Grant Park is one of the best places in the world to throw a show.
Right in the middle of the heart of the city.
It's unbelievable. Every time I go, I still have the best time all these years later. And I'm getting older, so I still have the best time there. It's just the electricity, the fans. I think it's the best music town in the country. Austin's one of the best music towns. We're lucky to be working in some of the best music towns in the country.
I know Geiger's super involved with the lineup and the sites, and he's super hands-on. How involved is Perry?
Perry's very involved. He was in Austin yesterday. He's meeting with Houston, talking about South America. Everybody's piling up, getting ready to go down to South America. It's been a collaborative effort from day one.
He's still cultivating that and super involved?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, he's great.
You guys decided to, I think the word would be franchise, but they're still yours. You guys are taking these to other markets and have done now several markets.
Yeah, and you can't cookie cutter them. I mean, it has to grow organically. You have to find the right partner. If you have the right partner and you have the right site, then you can do one. But it's not easy to produce these shows.
And you're trying to protect your brand too, right?
100%. You can't just throw one up. It's not that easy. It takes years to prep for one. So we've been lucky to find great partners around the world, and we're slowly, organically growing. It's not like we're trying to, I don't have a team out there scouring the earth looking for sites. But if we find a good partner who approaches us, we'll meet with them and analyze where it is and the demographics and the site. And we'll all collectively make a decision if we want to do one. And we've been launching one every few years, and we got another one we're going to launch real soon. We'll announce probably in a month or two.
What do you do when you go to Lollapalooza? What's your day?
Well, this month, my day is a little bit different. I came here. I fly from here to Chile. I meet my family. Amy's going to cover Lolla Chile with the kids. I fly to BA. I cover Lolla Argentina. Then I go to Rio. Then I go to Sao Paulo. And those days are pretty simple. I'm there if there's any issues. I talk to bands, a lot of friends that are in bands that play all these shows, talk to agents, talk to managers, talk to promoter, see the overall vibe of what's happening. And if there's any major issues, be there to help troubleshoot and support.
So you're basically like the GM of a department store, just there for quality control and paying attention to all areas of what's going on.
If I have to get out there and fix something that's broken, then we're in big trouble. But I'm there. I do whatever it needs to be done. I mean, I've had years where, when we had Rage Against the Machine, I'm in the pit helping with the
Catch
overflow.
Kids?
I mean, it was wild. One of the wildest shows I've ever seen. It was Rage Against the Machine. I think that was 2007, I think, or 8. But it was crazy. Don Mueller was in the pit.
Oh, man. Is there video of that?
I wish there was. There's video of the show, and it's one of the wildest shows. They had to stop the show 3 times. But yeah, I mean, I'll do anything. I'm a concert promoter, and I've been doing this my whole life. It's just instinctual. If you're doing this, you've been doing it forever. If something comes up, you just dive in and deal with it.
It's that entrepreneurial spirit. Just fix it and make them happen.
I don't know about that. Sometimes it's just like you just react.
We've known each other a long time, but I always enjoy watching you at Stubbs during South by because you're a great host, but you have so many people you're trying to pay attention to simultaneously on that deck. It's one of the most entertaining things in the world to watch.
I have had to go to South America for South by lately, but back when I was at South by, I loved it. I mean, I lived it. When I first started Stubbs, I would work night and day and it wore me out, but I'd love it. I love music and I love being around it. I like the vibe. I like the action. It was fun. So I didn't consider it work. I just enjoyed it. And everybody that would come to town was there to have a great time. And so it was natural.
So you guys developed the festivals and your club business, and there was a private side that you guys were doing weddings and things. You had the venue business and you had the management business, a lot of different things going on. Basically the biggest independent promoter in the US. And then you guys cut a deal with Live Nation. How'd that come to be?
I mean, look, Michael's great, and Charlie had a great relationship with Michael, and we did the deal because of Michael. He's been amazing to work with. And at that time, it was stressful. I mean, we were growing, and the last thing you want to do is, you have 100 and something employees at that time, 140, 150, and you don't want to make mistakes to where it is a detriment to people who work for you. And we were growing overseas. We're growing in South America. We needed help. We needed a good partner who had more infrastructure than what we had. We had a lot, and they wanted to be in the festival space, and they weren't. And so it was a perfect fit. But at the end of the day, it was Michael who the reason why we did it, because when he tells you something, I don't think a year later it's going to change. He's basically was like, listen, you do what you do and make sure that we don't screw it up. And if you need help with something, you come to me and I'll be there to help. And in the meantime, just keep running with your business. And for us, we needed that because we would be a little timid in certain areas because it's a beast to get one of these off the ground. And if I'm going into Paris or I'm going into Berlin, it's not cheap. And so we needed to make sure we were going to be stable for a long time. We had a lot of people's lives and they were having kids and it wasn't 20 people working anymore. So it was a perfect fit for us. I mean, it's worked out great. And it's everything he said he would do, he's done.
Chicago is a 2.5-hour flight from Austin. If something goes wrong, you guys are there in a minute. Internationally, that's not the same game. You guys are playing in whole different politics and a whole different environment. How do you even game up for that?
We send a team at every one of these shows. So we have a huge staff that goes to these shows and help. We have a security team that works with us on all the shows. We have our production team that goes to all the shows. We have our buyers that go to all the shows. We have our artist relations people that go to all the shows. And we have a full team on the road on all these concerts. And so it feels like home when you get there. There's all your guys are there in your area and they're working on different areas of the park. And they're working
with this massive entourage.
Well, they're working with the other promoter, an on-site promoter, and everybody's kind of a big family. And so we've been working with a lot of these guys for years. They all have been doing it a long time and they know exactly what needs to be done and they know how to put out fires and they know how to deal with artists, security, fans. I mean, it's a lot of stuff pops up. So we luckily have a great team.
Are you doing any talent buying anymore?
I do a lot, actually. I screw it up sometimes for Amy and Houston. They're like, really? Are you going to get involved in this deal? I'm like, I'm sorry. I'll get out of the way. But yeah, I love it.
There are a couple agents in particular that
well,
your
some
guys.
of the agents don't want to talk to, they want to talk to me direct. Amy and Houston joke. They're like, oh, he's calling Charles. Looks like there's going to be more money. Charles is going to cave. But I try not to. But I try not to get in their way either. But I do. I like being involved on the headliner level and the mid-level. And I'll book baby bands too. Sometimes if I like something, I see something, I'll go do a poll around the office and I'll listen to it. 9 times out of 10, I'll bring it to Amy or Houston and I'll be, hey, listen to this. They're like, I heard this like 8 months ago. Get out of my office. But I do. I'm very heavily involved in the day-to-day.
That's cool. When was the last baby band you got excited about?
A band we managed, Duran Jones. Great music. I love it. I've been listening to it for the last 3 months, nonstop.
How involved are you in the management side?
Very, very involved.
Any artists day to day that you're particularly like making the calls on?
I make calls on all of them. Walker does too. We're there to help direct traffic, help connect people around the world. It's a night and day job. It goes on 24/7, constantly working on the management.
Between the management, the venues, the amphitheater, you guys are involved with booking all over the place now. What else could you guys possibly take on to make it so you're not sleeping?
I mean, I don't look at it that way. I just kind of get up and do my job, but it really is organic. I'll get a call and 1 out of 100 will be good. Like one of those new opportunity or new site or gig or band, it just happens in the normal process of the everyday work environment. So I'm not stressing out where I'm going to grow, just happens organically. As long as you have to take the calls, you have to answer the emails, you got it. And sometimes it takes a while to get to where you need to get to, but I can only do so much, I can only take on so much. I'm not going to burn myself. I know what burnout is. I've been there. And I'm not going to burn myself out, but I'm going to keep my steady.
Because you got a lot on your plate.
It also helps when you don't get hammered every night like I did back in the old days.
But still occasionally.
Yeah, you have a little fun. So I like wine.
So you're here for how long?
I leave on Saturday to go to Chile.
So you got a nice little break here.
Yeah, I was going to leave Friday, but then I had some stuff move around. I got to do some more meetings on Friday, so I'm leaving Saturday.
So you're here setting up that management office?
I have a meeting with them on Friday, yes. But it's already set up. They're already in it.
That's a really big move. London and now LA, that's some serious expansion with that side of the business.
Right. And again, I keep saying organic, but it happened just talking to people. Simon White's a great guy. And just talking to him. Tyler Goldberg used to work for us and he and John manage Justice now. And I met Martin, who does Sylvanesso through Jackie, and he's a wonderful guy. And so it's just, we're like, yeah, let's work together.
Kind of at the point in your life where you actually get to make that decision. That's kind of nice.
I can't work with assholes anymore. I mean, our business. You do get to pick and choose who you work with. And we're lucky. Most people have been really good and solid. And there's some that, as you know, they're nasty and you just kind of refuse to deal with it.
You have any advice for some of the younger promoters coming up?
You can't be afraid to take risk. You have to take risks. Even if we were dumb back in the day, taking risk that we couldn't cover. We didn't know we couldn't cover. We were naive thinking it was just going to work. But still, you have to take these risks. So if you're a young promoter, you might want to find someone who's going to back that risk, because we got lucky. We weren't geniuses getting into Silker Park. It was just a great spot in a great town, and we got lucky. So the advice, I guess, would be, if you want to take some big steps, you better make sure you have somebody that's one. It could be one person that helps back you, so you don't go out of business on your first show.
Who gave you your first break that really put you through into the business?
I mean, people wouldn't even take my calls early on. Kara Lewis was very early believer. No one else would buy hip hop in Austin. So I was doing all the hip hop shows in Austin and Dallas. And so she was selling me everything she had in Texas. And so Frank Riley, Mike Luba, I did a lot of string cheese shows back in the day. Those three guys and girls, they really stepped up early, and Kara still does. And she still grinds me down, but she's been great with us, and she's loyal and wants to work and get deals done.
She seems like she's always on top. She has an amazing ear.
She's the best.
Man, I want to thank you so much for taking time and talking to me.
Appreciate it.
Attal is one of the best dudes in the business. He is just good people. Glad we finally got him on the podcast.
My name's Carl Leighton Pope, and I'm on Promoter 101. Tweets of the week.
It's the name of the podcast, so let's do it. Let's talk about Promoter 101 Tweets of the Week and see what was going on in Dan's sick and twisted head here. Now, Dan, you were pretty quiet on Twitter this past week. Probably had something to do with the 2 7,000+ mile flights that you took from Seattle to London for ILMC, which, by the way, let's give a shout out for you and Peter Minch for the awesome keynote session you delivered at ILMC. Great way to cap off a productive week last week. I'm not going to let you stop me, Dan. Let's start with this one. Never name the people you're ridiculing. It's the classy thing to do.
And it also saves a ton of legal fees.
Don't be easily offended. Ever.
No one brings the sensitive guy to the inner loop.
The only thing worse than apologizing when you're wrong is not being willing to apologize when you know you're wrong.
Own your mistakes. Be the bigger man.
And that'll do it for Promoter 101 Tweets. You can follow Dan on Twitter. He's at The Jew. This show is at Promoters. That's Promoters, plural, 101.
Hi, I'm Pino Sayoko, Spanish promoter for 40 years now. Promoter 101.
This week we have a classic war story from Live Nation's Rich Best. What do you got for us?
Man, it was humbling, a little bit embarrassing, but probably the show where I learned absolutely the most about doing something of significant scale. Late 90s, early 2000, House of Blues had bought the Blink-182 tour. I mean, it was right when they were blowing up. We didn't have an amphitheater in Minneapolis. They still don't have an amphitheater in Minneapolis. We promoted it at the minor league ballpark that the St. Paul Saints played at. I had never done anything of that scope. I mean, we were the kings of the clubs, the kings of ballrooms, and the kings of probably 5,000 and down. I mean, we owned it. But at that level, 15,000 set up in a field, we were in way over our head. It was a clusterfuck that ended up working. But it was a clusterfuck. I think Gus Brandt was on the tour.
Oh, wow.
It was a who's who. And Melissa Miller, she flew in for the show. She actually settled the show.
For the act.
I didn't know what a real touring deal was. I'm like, why am I doing this with Melissa Miller? She works for House of Blues.
And she won the Talent Bar of the Year every year at this point.
Every year. I mean, she was it, right? And obviously had way more experience than I did at the time. But every line item expense we got wrong. I didn't even know there was a facility fee. I found out that day.
From the venue?
From the venue.
How much was that per ticket?
That was $3 a ticket.
How many tickets did you sell?
14,000, all of them.
So that's more than your margin?
Yeah, more than margin. Merch, they didn't have an in-house merch person. So literally, it was myself, our staff accountant that we had at Compass. We were the merch people, like counting in, counting out. We actually hired some concessionaires to sell merch. Dude, I was there counting merch with Chris Siglin, who's still the band's merch person to this day, until 3 a.m. We sold it out, and I thought it was great because the building didn't take the merch, so we were getting the merch. Nobody's going to find out, you know? But we sold that show out, and honestly, I think I lost probably 30 grand. It was impressive, really. But I'll tell you what.
You learned a whole lot.
A whole lot on that.
Nothing more amazing than selling out a show and losing money.
It's awesome. You almost have to try.
Promoter 101, great war story with Rich Best.
Rich is absolutely one of the biggest talent buyers in the world right now, but it's cool to see him remember his early days when he was just starting out. You have to remember, Dan, we all had to start somewhere.
Herman Sherman, Live Nation Belgium, Promoter 101.
We're joined for our next interview on episode 74, Promoter 101, by Opus 3 artists Sarah Pelch.
Sarah Pelch, you are now living in beautiful Aspen, Colorado.
Lucky me.
Opus has given you the ability to live and work remotely.
It's very kind of them. And I've been with them for years, so they know the work I do. So I think it's okay that I'm not in the office every day. I do go to New York every few months, but what I do is work with orchestras and performing arts centers all over the West Coast and some of the Midwest. And that's all done over the phone, email. You travel to meet them. So it can be done from anywhere.
Cyber commuting is a thing in our industry at this point. The whole world has come to embrace it. Plus, you're that much closer to the right time zone while you're working.
That's part of it also. And there's a huge classical music festival here in the summer where we have probably 20 or 25 of our clients come out every summer. So it's nice that I'm on the ground for all of those concerts too.
So the arts world is serious business.
It is serious. There can be a lot of serious discussions around repertoire and artists' needs. And because our buyers are also probably PhD performers or conductors, artistic directors, they bring a level of seriousness to it also in our discussions.
So this level of higher end service to deal with the different buyers that you may have to deal with and dealing the grants and working with orchestras and programming a season.
Yes, and fighting for survival sometimes. I mean, the shows that we tour don't always make money from ticket sales. They have to raise money. They have to please their donors. They have to make sure it's right for their community.
A lot of nonprofits, a lot of trusts involved.
Yes, universities, foundations, orchestras, opera companies, music festivals.
Can arts be produced and turn a profit at the same time?
They can. And that's always an interesting line to look at. And I also like to look at the line between art and entertainment. I think Alvin Ailey Dance Company, artists that we tour, is a great example of high artistic level, and they sell out huge venues all over the country.
Who else do you represent that is of name stature?
Yo-Yo Ma sells out everywhere he goes. I wish there were more of him. I wish there were 10 of him because there's just never enough dates to fill the demand. And even if we get availability for Atlanta, 5 different buyers in Atlanta want the opportunity to present him. So there's always somebody upset, which makes it hard as a booking agent.
But in a given year, he doesn't really work that many dates, right?
He works a lot all over the world, 5 different continents. And sometimes he wants to do solo recitals. He just did solo Bach at the Hollywood Bowl, completely sold out. And then he may do a new concerto by a composer that he's championing at the time. Or he may tour with the Silk Road Ensemble, which is a group that he founded over 15 years ago. Or he might tour with Edgar Meyer doing Goat Rodeo. And because he has such artistic and intellectual curiosity, he's always dabbling in different projects.
Seemingly, Yo-Yo Ma could go on the road and do a rock-style tour where he's playing the way 2 cellos or piano guys are touring.
Well, Hollywood Bowl was a great example. It was plugged in. There were probably video screens, but the music was solo Bach cello suites. It was him playing Bach on stage. That's it. So there's no drum kit. You don't need fancy lights. I mean, with this music, speaks for itself enough. I don't think you need extra production value. I mean, you want to have a good experience and a good show.
Well, he's such a crossover talent because you don't have to be in the arts world to appreciate
He transcends that.
There are certain acts that break that boundaries. Like Straight No Chaser is a great act to get your feet in the door of that world. But at the same time, it's lighthearted and it's fun and it's entertaining and it's easy. But availability is a tough thing, right? Because he only does work so much and because he plays all over the world.
He's only one person. And you have to have a travel day and then you have to have a rest day and then you have your family and then you have a recording project or maybe you're artistic producer of a new series at the Kennedy Center. You have all these different things you have to balance and you're just one person.
So you're working here in Aspen. There's a beautiful venue here, great club. It's a very wealthy market. Does it give you a different vibe from working in New York where the world loves the arts?
I miss the Metropolitan Opera. I miss Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center. I miss the Met Museum of Art. But I knew I would be leaving that behind when I left New York. But I also came out here for nature and more peace and hiking and skiing. And I know I can travel to see whatever exhibit I want to see. But there's a lot of culture here. And I think that started with the Aspen idea, the Aspen Institute, when the Pepkes came from Chicago in the 40s. And they wanted this place to be body, mind, and spirit.
The Art of Aspen.
Yeah, they called it the Aspen Idea. So we have the Aspen Institute, Aspen Ideas Festival, Aspen Film Festivals. Of course, Belly Up brings in major acts. I mean, acts that I love. I'm seeing Gary Newman this month. Jane's Addiction is coming. Of course, it's a super high ticket price, but the Classical Music Festival in the summer, it's a great little tiny special mountain town.
So the art world crosses over into the mainstream music world, and we saw that start to happen, I think, more so when the economy changed.
You mean 2008 when
you saw more and more venues not having the money to produce the seasons that they used to be able to, and they had to rely on independent promoters and some of the bigger promoters to come in and help finish their season or produce them as one-off shows.
Right, co-promoting shows. I mean, you're doing that with a lot of performing arts centers.
I think there's a good world there where there is revenue to be found, especially since there's less opportunity for those shows to be working and there's still an audience there that wants them.
Right.
Does Middle America respond to the arts the way San Francisco, New York, Chicago, and LA do?
There are arts fans all over the country. They may not be as densely populated, in the middle of the country.
A lot of your artists that you represent will be featured with the local orchestras. So when they're putting their series together and they're bringing out, this is the featured person, they buy them from you. You guys really specialize in that.
Right. And we love that we have artists at all different levels in their career. We have young violinists where they will take a date for $1,500. And then we have violinists where they won't play a date unless it's $35,000 for one night, nothing less.
And a lot of those are one-off shows and fly in and fly outs, opposed to like actual bus and truck tours. Although Evan Ellie is a full-on tour.
That's a truck tour. The 10 Tenors are a truck tour. Our orchestra tours, when we tour Israel Philharmonic, Cleveland Orchestra, Estonian National Symphony, the Philharmonia with Esa-Pekka Salonen. I mean, we have to look at tour budgets and route it very carefully.
The art involved with some of that stuff seems like the education process would have to exist on a lot of these when you're selling to middle American orchestras of who some of these things are.
I think the artistic directors have to sell it to their audience because their audiences may not know who they are. Maybe 10 people do, or maybe a few people on their board know who the Philharmonia is. Or the Orchestra Revolutionnaire and Romantique with Sir John Eliot Gardner, he's one of my favorite conductors. I mean, the fee is astronomical. We don't even have a lot of availability. But yeah, maybe there's only 5 people who know who it is.
Yeah, I don't even have a favorite conductor.
Okay.
It sounds like you have a top 5.
There's still time.
But you have a favorite, which means you have a list that you really like.
Oh, and I have different categories of favorite, different conductors playing different rep.
So it's in this genre, he's your favorite guy overall.
One of them. In fact, I think he's an alien. He's so good. I don't think he's human. But I also say that about Meshuggah. I think they're aliens. And that's a compliment.
And I mean that in the best possible way.
I do. They've evolved.
I think we've seen Broadway, particularly Broadway across America, their touring system really help the arts come to places it couldn't go by touring those Broadway shows across America into every last art house in the country. The production fits. You don't have to go to New York anymore to see those shows.
Isn't that wonderful?
It's amazing.
It's great. And I love everyone's aesthetic sensibility being raised. I mean, I think about that a lot, like our collective unconscious or consciousness of just aesthetics and art. I want everyone to experience all of these performances.
Yeah, the irony in some of these things, like people buy the season seats for things like Broadway Across America or for the orchestra shows. Mm-hmm. And then you go, these people that just go. It's just the thing.
And maybe they're exposed to shows they haven't seen before and artists they haven't seen before and music they haven't heard before.
Right. I went to Book of Mormon. I'm a Trey Matt fan, South Park. And some of the people that were there because they had season seats to all of the Broadway shows. Mm-hmm. And it was fun to see some of the older people's face catch on when they were hearing what the orchestra was singing. Kind of interesting.
It's nice when artists push boundaries. And sometimes we have to warn presenters, okay, this dance company is going to do a nude piece. You have to prepare your audience, or some will just tell us flat out, no, we cannot put that on stage. I'll get killed. I'll get too many letters.
Let's talk about the future of arts. Do you see that merging with more collaboration with some mainstream rock stuff? It seems like that's happening a lot more now. We're seeing things like Nelly with the orchestra.
Yes. And I came across that a lot when I was an agent at the agency group for a couple of years. We would have rock artists who are curious themselves as artists. And they, even at Opus 3, we work with Bela Fleck for his banjo concertos. He's written 3 now. And the Cleveland Orchestra brought him to perform his banjo concerto with the Cleveland Orchestra, 3 sold-out shows, and orchestras keep commissioning him to write more banjo concertos. And maybe future banjo players down the line will love to play number 2 instead of number 1 and number 3.
It would be easy to think that getting into the industry would gravitate you towards booking rock bands, and you were at the agency group, so that like obviously there was that moment of that stuff, but you particularly sell arts. How did that happen?
I just kind of gravitated towards the arts world because I think aesthetically that's more fulfilling for me. And while I love certain rock bands, I'm very particular, judgmental, and not very forgiving. It's my own aesthetic sensibility, and it can be a detriment to me. I just have my own personal taste.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time and talking to me.
Thank you. That was really fun.
Just love Sarah. She's doing an amazing job out there in the arts world. Loved having her on the podcast.
Hi, this is Zed McBool from Live Nation Middle East, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Celebrating birthdays the week of March 16th to 22nd, 2018.
On Friday the 16th, we're wishing a happy birthday to Matt Pryor and Nicole Carlson.
Saturday, TM for Straight No Chaser, Mike Taylor. He loves to be hugged, everyone. Make sure if you see Mike Taylor, give him a big birthday hug. CAA's Brian Greenbaum, and APA's Steve Ferguson.
On Sunday, we're wishing a happy birthday to Vector Management's Brian Penix, Morrison Center's Virginia Treat, Larry Shields, Debbie Keller, Sacramento's Justin Norton, and APA's Josh Humiston.
Monday the 19th, Jordan Polly.
On Tuesday, wishing happy birthday to AJ Jacobs and Live Nation's Zed McBool.
Wednesday, Mike Monterulo, Dave Ratner, Larry Weintraub, and the bow tie himself, Mr. David Buxner.
And on Thursday, we're going to wish a happy birthday to Terry Morgan and Steve Kelly.
Hey, happy birthday to everybody from the gang at Promoter 101.
Josh Javon, X-Ray Touring. I'm on Promoter 101.
And for you listeners out there this week on episode 74 Promoter 101, we've got a bonus interview with Milk and Honey's Lucas Keller.
Lucas Keller, what's up, man?
What's going on, man? Thanks for having me.
We're in Beverly Hills, and I find this to be kind of ironic because not many of your acts would be playing in the highest end of the world. Those guys tend to play the cooler parts of town.
Right. No artists in Beverly Hills, right?
There's just not a lot of rock clubs on this side of town, although I'm sure Roger LeBlanc would take issue with that statement.
Right.
Milk and Honey tends to have bands that play for the people.
All the big successful corporate music companies ended up in Beverly Hills, but I always thought it was cool to be east of La Brea.
Ironically, you can see the Gersh logo outside the window.
Exactly. William Morris up the street, right?
Now you're having a good moment. The whole EDM thing is kind of just killing it right now.
It is. The EDM thing, which I thought I was late for, is going really well. It's been great. We manage about 20 artists in the electronic space and some nascent developing talent and some that are more established. And I've been doing that for about 2 years, I think. I gave up on rock bands for a moment.
It seems like the heaviest production in the world now is the EDM shows to begin with.
Yeah. I think the touring side of it, you'll appreciate this. The touring side of it has been really interesting to me. It's kind of like DJs tour the way country artists tour, right? It's like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and just that whole kind of slog of Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is just not a part of the conversation, which is really nice.
You're seeing some of the bigger acts have really taken to taking production with them instead of trying to piece it locally in each market.
Yep.
And it's gone from the rave promoters in the warehouses moving into the bigger arenas into the bigger promoters taking that from them, because now it's such real production that you need the guys that know how to produce an arena show to put together those elaborate shows.
Yeah, I think for big hard ticket acts in the electronic space, it's like any other genre, right? Put up a 50, 60 date tour and play, every day of the week. But I think there's this great business in the club business, right? Where the production is in the club, you're touring. I always thought the tour manager for electronic acts is almost like they need a friend or they'll get lonely. I don't know that there's a lot of work for the tour manager to do for a DJ. But yeah, and then of course some big acts that, carry more production, of course.
Everybody's kind of catching up to what EDM has been doing with the video, with the big, huge fog and mist and cannons and explosions. And you can go to those shows and pretty much have a good idea what U2 and Guns N' Roses and the Stones will be doing next year on the road.
Even the mid-level acts, like there's a good amount of production that goes into it. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing, and I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that there are some of those EDM promoters that came up with it that are still doing it. Guys like Disco Donnie, Chad Anderson at USC. Like, there are a handful of those guys that were able to rise to the level and still be pioneers and lead the way. It hasn't all been taken over by the big corporate promoters.
Right. It's also, I guess across the board on that business, the guys that had big labels in the space when electronic music was underground, the guys that were big touring agents in that space, where I think they were kind of the first guys at the door on Black Friday, to run into the building. They've been, waiting the longest. And I feel like you could say that about any of the guys that run the labels, publishers, etc. There's a lot of people that were doing electronic music in the 80s and 90s when it wasn't as cool, right?
Well, it's an interesting thing. I think a lot of us cut our teeth with it, and nobody ever took it super seriously. And there were a couple of reasons for it. First, I believe we could do our punk rock shows in those venues early in the evening, clear the room out at 11 o'clock, use the same sound system and add a couple low ends on, and then put the DJ up and get 2 plays out of a single night. Also, these kids were used to going to warehouses. It didn't matter what the venue you put them in. The acts never complained. They just wanted to get paid. There were only a handful of big Rabbit in the Moon, and there's a handful of them, Kyoki. There weren't a ton of Josh Wink level acts back then. And clearly, we've had a huge paradigm shift in where the business has gone, but I think less of us took it seriously. I think partially, too, because a big part of the promoters for that space and that time were just throwing parties so they could sell ecstasy to these kids. They were the drug dealers renting a warehouse, throwing some music, and then they had their audience, and a lot of us had to keep our distance from that stuff as much as possible because it wasn't the side of the business that the rest of us wanted to be on.
For me, it was like, we'd have the all ages show at the Metro in Chicago upstairs, and then the dance club was the Smart Bar downstairs.
Right.
And it was like those shows would run till like 4 a.m. And, I remember asking somebody once, I was like, I don't understand what happens after 2 a.m. because they close the bar. It's like, well, people drink until 2 a.m. Then they do drugs from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. So, okay, that's how that works.
I think they do the drugs before too, but they're really kicking it too.
There we go.
The industry has really cleaned itself up in that space in particular, where you have some of the acts being managed by guys like Corn Capshaw. It's very legitimate space. These aren't the same shows, and now they're playing amphitheaters and they're festivals, and they're doing real numbers in those festival spaces. And what they do is part of like events like Coachella, where they've taken over their tents, and they're the biggest names that hang on those vents. They're huge.
Yeah, it's a huge space that I think a lot of people are concerned is maybe downsizing a bit, but I just see it getting bigger. A lot of these have turned into huge juggernaut touring acts that, you could really see when it was happening, 3-4 years ago when the songs started getting played on pop radio. And these really became artists that weren't underground anymore. That's a huge focus for us, is turning these records into hit records.
So you're promoting EDM acts as if they're actually rock acts in that way.
Yeah.
Touring them like country acts and promoting them like rock acts.
Yeah. Big part of what we're trying to do is A&R their records, and use this whole kind of songwriter-producer side of our business, which is...
Well, that's going to be a huge shift, too, in the space, because basically they were warehouse shows that were bootleg copies, almost like Grateful Dead Society, where people would trade tapes from different cities.
And, there wasn't commercial music at all.
Well, it
was techno. If you remember techno shows where one song would go on for 4.5 hours.
Especially those house and trance shows.
Yeah, totally. I always enjoyed it. It's just the music has changed so much. When you have artists that are such pop-leaning, electronic artists, I think it's just a different side of the genre. I think there's a lot of it that's going back underground again. But, it's no secret that some of the highest paid acts are electronic acts. So a lot of what we do is making records for those acts, and some that we manage and some that we don't. We're a very A&R-driven management shop. Lots of hits have come out of our shop that are not even for guys that we manage necessarily. So we make tons of electronic records.
As long as you get your hand in a cookie jar somehow.
Part of it is like we had the big Flume hit last year. We have the current Kygo single. We have the last Steve Aoki hit, Just Hold On with Louis Tomlinson. Those records, there are writers, and we're making them with other acts that are managed by other friends. But, at some point we're like, okay, well, maybe we should manage some of these, that we leverage about a 25 client writer-producer roster to try to do that and to float some of those records over, which has been a huge advantage, I think.
Looking forward to some more of the crossovers that the different artists do to conglomerate, thinking Flume and Wayne Newton. I think that's bound to be huge.
I don't know if anyone wants that one, but maybe. I was talking to someone about this the other day about how, electronic music really turned Vegas into a contemporary music town. I mean, it was a heritage town in the past, right? It was where acts kind of went to retire. And I feel like
Bobby Reynolds might argue the fact that AEG had done a good job with that with the joint already.
Yeah, I think so. That's a good point.
I would venture to say with what AEG did with C3’s when they put up the Coliseum, and maybe originally with the Elton shows and the Celine shows, it wasn't exactly that, but now you're seeing acts like the Who's doing residencies.
That's high-end legacy talent, right? It doesn't have to be some of the stuff down the strip. I think the electronic music thing was just a different experience, right? People that are going to Excess at the Wynn or Hakkasan are obviously very different than who's going.
Sure. But still, some of the stuff that now you're seeing with the Brooklyn Bowl being there,
sure.
It's like some of the new pool properties that have amazing shows where you could see an
The Britney Spears thing was really big. That was a really big thing. I don't know that anyone was betting on that, and that's
well, Live Nation clearly was
huge. Yeah,
they won on that big, and she's doing multiple nights in stadiums.
Yeah,
people love the hits.
Yeah.
She is now a pop heritage act.
Crazy to think about it that way.
It is, but she's been doing it a very long time.
She has.
What's the future of the business in your eyes?
That's a broad question. I mean, I think we're in this different time now in terms of recorded music, and that you have to make one single stand out instead of an album, right? And it's been that way for a while, but I think that songs are so important. And I think with the amount of music that's released now, I just believe so much in A&R. I've been doing this for long enough that I always thought that was like the bad word. Like nobody ever wanted that title of like nobody likes their A&R guy, right? No management company ever wanted to start a label because they needed someone to blame, right? And what I realized was a few years ago, I was leaving a big company and starting this company, and I thought, I think A&R is really important, and I think having access to great songwriters and great records and being able to engineer hits with your clients was really important. And so we put a lot of focus into that over the last few years, and it's really been working. And I think that figuring out how to get songs to actually cut through all the noise is really difficult, and just as difficult as it's ever been. I mean, I think we all thought that Spotify was going to be this independent artist-friendly platform, and Spotify is essentially just a digital version of what radio was, right? You still have to go through a gatekeeper. You still need to kind of get past that wall. And so for us, if you figure that New Music Friday features 70 to 80 new songs every week, it's a lot of noise to cut through. I think if we went back 25 years ago, there certainly weren't the number of artists there are now. So now we have tons of music to cut through, and to get, every time we have a song that becomes a number one hit at radio, I think about just the long haul that a song has to get through, and the amount of times it can get killed on the way to being a hit is crazy. So the better records that I can put out there using our songwriters and the people we represent there, the better off all of our live talent is.
So you're saying the proof is really in the pudding?
Yeah, I think it is really about making the most high quality records. There's plenty of artists that are lifestyle driven acts that have a brand where it's not necessarily about the song. But for most of the stuff that I'm seeing in the crossover space, it is all about the song.
Are your acts making their money on the road, or are they making their money off the albums?
Artists, because of the money they make on the road, at some point the music becomes the loss leader, but it's driving the career, right? So most artists that are driven by their songs, and having hits, need to continue to have hits, because if you have one hit as a DJ, one really big hit, your hard and soft ticket value goes up. You have another one, it keeps going up. If you don't have any hits for a few years, goes way down, right? And so if I can control that, it's better off for all of our artists.
So it's moving into the mainstream. Are we going to see fairs and festivals start to book the bigger name acts? Are we going to have a Saturday night, late night set at some of the hipper county fairs and some of the bigger festivals that have the budgets?
I don't know about fairs. That's too soon to tell. I couldn't say on that.
Seems like it's big enough now that whoever makes themselves that household name and the first one in that space wins. Or is it just too hip to hurt the brand for somebody to actually take that risk?
I think there's all different types of artists in the space, right? On the left hand, you have Flume, and on the right hand, you have the Chainsmokers, right? And they're both great and talented in their own right. One is probably a little more hip than the other, and the other one is just a big radio pop act that happens to be DJs. And you build those two very differently.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously there's a lot of luck and magic with both of them, too, as far as timing and
I think so.
Being able to cut through the white noise. The year that the Chainsmokers had is, if you tried to build that year all over again from scratch, 95 times out of 100, you'd never get to radio.
It's like every time I have an artist saying, when there's a kind of an impasse in the record cycle and someone says, I need a TV and film sync replacement. It's like, well, thousands of TV film syncs happen every day. How many of them actually cause a moment where there's a turn?
Well, especially because it kind of reversed itself, because it used to be at the end of the shows, like in the 90s, the end of Dawson Creek, they'd say this was featured by Toad the Wet Sprocket track that's now available.
Grey's Anatomy launched a lot of artists.
Right, but we don't see that anymore.
We had a big moment with Christina Perri, had a huge moment on So You Think You Can Dance, where one of her songs was played in the closing scene, and that changed everything for her career and lined up all the songs we had after that. You can't rely on that. You never know when that's going to happen. But every artist said, I just need a sync placement, man. That's going to change it all.
The genius of it.
I think that the brilliance in some of these acts, like the Chainsmokers or it's David Guetta, artists like that have something in common. They have great A&R driven managers behind them. These are guys that are spending as much time thinking about the record as they are thinking about the production and touring them and the brand. And I think on a going forward basis, I think managers that aren't thinking about the records and the songs and how to get hits, I think are significantly disadvantaged.
I liken it to the UFC, where you got these DJs that could be playing a club one night and could be opening up for David the next night. But the problem is, if they're not managed or handled by the right people and they're not viewed the right way, they don't get to fight in the UFC. They're fighting in these like random casino bouts somewhere, that they're just this random club guy and they never get to raise to that level, no matter how good they are, how talented they are, unless it's showcased properly. And because they're not a rock band, the avenues of getting to see them on circuits aren't nearly as available. So it's more like country music, where it's so top heavy. You either break or you do not. Where in rock, there's many shades of gray. That seems to be the case. You either are or you are not, and there is no middle.
I think there's a little bit of a death of the middle class in electronic music, especially in the last couple of years. People who don't know much about the genre, every time I, could be sitting down for a lunch or something and I explain my business. And once you start talking about DJs, people are like, wow, that's crazy. They make so much money. I bet they're all flying around on Learjets. I'm like, it's not quite what people think it is. It's,
I think
top
there was
six
a guys
moment
that do 2 shows a night on a Friday and Saturday.
There was a moment, though, where, so a friend of mine refers to it as the EDM gold rush, where there was a lot in the middle that were getting paid 30 to 50 grand a night that were maybe didn't have hits or maybe didn't feel like they should be paid that, but they were. And I think that slowed down.
Because Lee Anderson's a damn good agent.
Yeah, I have a client with him. He does a very good job. You don't see that as much anymore, though. There were a lot of guys that were making big room house music that I think have slowed down, and it's not what it was. But there's still a huge business there if you have the right act and they have the right records.
Now that it's become more of in the mainstream, can parents feel safe now that these kids are finding this stuff on Spotify and on radio, sending their kids to see an EDM show at the arena? Is it a safe place to send your kids?
Man, I don't know where a safe place is to send your kids. I mean, I was in Vegas this past week and at the CMA Awards, and I don't know what to think anymore, And I mean, I'm sure you guys think about that a lot as it relates to security and live talent. And
I was thinking more of the
drug use,
dirty warehouses with drugs and creepy guys and like whatever, unlicensed parties. And now it's this different thing.
I don't know. Was that dangerous? I mean, weren't those all pretty happy, friendly people that just gave you drugs?
You're not enough ecstasy. Anything's happy.
I just think nothing good happens after 2 a.m. When they were talking in L.A. about raising the bar time to 4 a.m., I was like, oh, that's not a great idea. That means then people stay out till 6 a.m. That's what that means.
That's good.
But yeah, I don't know that that's an issue. Any more than I guess it's ever been. But, when you compare a warehouse show in Brooklyn to a big mainstream arena show for a pop DJ, yeah, of course there's a difference.
But it's the roots, right? I mean, that's where it came from. Before Hepcat got to headline the Palladium, they were doing the whiskey, It's just like that jump had to happen for everyone. Nobody starts out at the arenas, except every once in a while when somebody gets somebody's checkbook and somebody tries something really stupid. I love those trust fund shows.
What are you seeing in the electronic genre? I mean, in terms of just live touring versus 4 or 5 years ago?
Well, it's kind of funny because country, comedy, mainstream touring, rock, all are segmented pretty heavily now, where you have to know exactly what you're doing. And if you don't understand the matrix, not only of the act, but of that particular market, you're going to get killed. And particularly with electronica, there are certain nights in certain markets that have been built up, and you have to play into those nights. People go out on those nights. It's so particular. I can take a punk rock band into a market. I could do the Offspring in almost any market in the United States, and I could figure out how to market that show without ever have done that band
in that market. You know, country's the same way too. You can really make a misstep in country under the same scenarios by putting up a show in an A market opposed to going into the suburbs and putting the exact same show up, because those people don't live in the city, they live in the suburbs. And it's amazing how different 25 minutes will make on a show that's going to sell the difference between 3,000 or 4,000 tickets over 20 minutes. It's amazing.
Country touring is really interesting, man. Like just the idea that all these guys are back in Nashville during the week. I mean, it's crazy. They go back, write songs Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, go back on tour. And it's insane. And also, like having some friends that are artists and touring that, you know, some more established, but a lot that are kind of on the way up and are kind of the more exciting artists coming up in country. The amount of tertiary markets these guys have to go into to work country radio is like amazing. The amount of shows you have to play in Peoria, Illinois. It's crazy. Just to break one country single, it's a lot of work. A lot more work than pop. That's for sure.
Peoria, Illinois, future of country music.
Yeah.
You don't hear that a lot.
You don't, no.
But there are some random Bemidji, Brookings.
Yeah.
These are the markets that it happens.
Yeah.
Huntsville.
Yeah.
Montgomery.
Yeah.
These markets matter. You don't see a lot of them on an EDM routing.
Definitely not Bemidji. That was good. That was a deep reach in the bag.
Hey, man.
Yeah.
we do it all.
Far north Minnesota.
We do it all. Hey, you know, it's not all about Duluth. You got to work them all.
Right. Amazing.
What can people do to get your attention if they're in the industry and they want some help?
I still get really excited about tenacious people. I was talking about this with someone over the weekend about Jerry Weintraub calls the Colonel over and over again until he can get him on the phone to book Elvis, right? You know, it's like I love people that are that tenacious and driven. You know, the question is always kind of, do they have the chops to kind of back that up, right? You know, so we get tons and tons of unsolicited emails from talent. I think our office listens to most of it because you just don't know, right? Obviously, the best stuff comes to referral, but I was just listening to a podcast from one of my clients did this morning for this podcast called And the Writer Is. That's all songwriters. And he was talking about how he just tweeted a couple record producers when he came to LA. And one of them got back to him, and that was the start of his whole long, successful career as a big pop producer. I guess, there's a number of different ways to reach people. I loved getting something through a referral, but I also don't mind a cold call. There's certain names I've seen on the phone sheet like 9 days in a row, and I'm like, I think I have to call this guy back because he keeps calling me, which I remember doing to lots of people. I would just call people repeatedly. So I think there's a couple different ways. I'll still say to people when they can't reach someone, I'm like, why don't you just tweet him? And the amount of people that get to like a big artist that they've been trying to get to just by sending them a direct message is astounding to me.
My favorite thing is, part of the industry is traveling. And unless you're a super, super high level, rich, famous person, you probably aren't traveling private, at least not always. By putting your head not down while you walk through the airport, you'll be amazed at the people you'll walk past on the average day. Just randomly bumping into people in line at Starbucks in the Nashville airport. You know, it's just like those moments where it's like, oh my God, you were in Led Zeppelin. Those moments happen while you're standing in line at Starbucks.
I have a great Starbucks Nashville story.
Let's hear it.
Of a songwriter who, I was in Nashville, I want to say 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And there's a successful songwriter now that when I went up to the counter, I gave her my credit card to buy a coffee. And she's like, Lucas Keller? And I was like, okay, well, this has never happened to me before because nobody recognizes any of us, right? Everybody's like an insider in the music business. So unless you rise to a level where you're on one of these like karaoke TV shows, you continue to be an insider. And so she, I guess, knew my name and a bunch of my clients and bought me the coffee and breakfast sandwich I had or whatever. And then, last year when I was at the BMI Awards during the CMAs, she, from mutual friends, said, oh, hey, you got to meet this gal. And I was like, she's like, hey, I don't know if you remember this, but a couple of years ago in Nashville. And I was like, I totally remember that because how can I forget that? Because I'm like, who am I? I'm like, how does she recognize me? And now she's like a huge songwriter. So yeah, you never know, right? You might be able to get songs from the girl behind the counter at the Starbucks.
Turns out that actually every single person that handed her a credit card, she did that too and hoped they react.
There you go. Hoping that they're in the music business, right? And in Nashville, they might be. I mean, so much of that town is built around music. It's crazy.
I love going into like Arnold's or something and you see like 27 people from the industry like scattered.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody paying more than $6 for lunch. It's
yeah, that town's crazy. We used to open an office there about 3 months ago and I'm really excited about it.
Oh, nice.
And doing country music and, I love that market.
EDC.
Yeah, I mean, I went from 3 weeks ago, I went from Amsterdam dance event to come back home to then go to CMAs. And I was saying to someone last week, I said, my life is very strange. It's like some country music, some electronic music.
Molly and whiskey mix.
Molly and bourbon. That's right.
It could work.
That could be an album title or a song title.
Something like Granger Smith could release.
Yeah. But I think most of what we're doing really now is pop music. I mean, that's what I'm most focused on. A lot of that bleeds over into electronic music just because electronic, I think one of the reasons I get along with a lot of these guys, because I don't call them DJs. To me, they're just producers. None of them know what a Technics 1200 is, okay? They're born far too long after anything vinyl. And they're all just producers on Logic or Pro Tools making songs on their laptop. And then when it came time to you get to the show and you got the CDJs and they're like, I don't even know how to use these. A lot of these guys had to learn how to be great technical DJs on CDJs instead of just producing on a Pro Tools or whatever. So I like that about it because these guys are legitimate producers, and DJs to me are an artist outlet. Getting a song from one of our writers placed with Zed is as exciting, if not maybe more exciting than, I don't know, pick another pop artist, right? Because they get commercial airplay now. So that's a lot of what we do, is putting songs with other people's DJs or our DJs and trying to turn them into pop hits.
You guys have clearly found your own lane and been very successful at it.
It's been a good, I think, 3 years. We turned 3 years October 1st, 3 years old. I was excited about this. We had 3 number ones in 3 different genres, which I don't know has ever happened at a management company, across 3 different clients, which is crazy. We had the number one with Imagine Dragons, Thunder, the number one with Demi Lovato, a song called Sorry Not Sorry, and then we had a number one with Maren Morris and Vince Gill, a song called Dear Hate, which was about the Route 91 Fest thing.
You got to round the table. That's amazing, man.
That's good.
Right on. Congratulations.
No electronic hits that week, but so those all came from our writer-producer business. You know, I had not had that many kind of at one genre, or across different genres, which was great.
Wearing a lot of hats and a members-only jacket, which I got to tell you, I love.
Actually collect these, which is kind of embarrassing, but I'm trying to bring them back, you know. I think I have about 10 of these, which is, you know, the wine red corduroy one is where it's like over the line, you know. Like, that one's like, oh, he's serious, you know.
Bringing it back Carlton style.
Totally.
I like it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us.
Yeah.
Promoter 101.
Pleasure.
Milk and Honey seems to be firing on all cylinders right now. Stoked for Lucas and his team. Couldn't be more happy for those guys.
Louis Messina, and I'm on Promoter 101.
If you want to reach out to us, send us an email at steiny@promoter101.net.
The quote of the week comes from Hans Christian Andersen: where words fail, music speaks.
We're going to be back next week, same pod time, same pod place. We're one of the biggest agents in the world, working with everyone from Adele to Mumford & Sons. That's ITB's Lucy Dickens. Plus, we're going to have Live Nation Canada's Harvey Cohen and a truly royal war story from AEG Presents UK, Toby Layton Pope.
And give you a little hint, that's going to include Springsteen, McCartney, and the Queen. Great war story. But until then, we're wishing you sold out shows for the weeks to come.
Cheers, motherfuckers.
This is Dave Shapiro,
Mike Mills,
Sam Hunt, Joey Scolari,
Rich Best,
Tim Sweetwood,
Andy Levitt,
Sarah Beasley,
Jared Paul,
Bobby Clay,
John Phillips,
Craig Pomley,
Harvey Cohen,
Rich Schaefer.
This is Eric Mayers, and I am live on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
You're listening to Promoter 101.
Ba-da-ba-ba.